I'm 67 years old. My knees creak when I stand, my back aches when the weather turns, and I've got more miles on me than my old Ford, but my mind's still sharp, sharp enough to know when something's wrong in my own house. It was December, 2 in the morning, when I woke to an empty bed. Frost crawled across the window like spider legs. Outside, Vera's sedan sat in the glow of Curtis's barn apartment, engine ticking, exhaust rising white against the black Missouri sky. The light was on in his window, had been for 30 minutes. I stood at the kitchen sink, watching. The percolator from this morning's coffee still smelled like burnt grounds. Cold metal beneath my palms. My breath fogged the glass. What was my wife doing in my disabled brother's room at 2 in the morning? When she finally came back through the snow, boots crunching on frozen gravel, I pretended to be asleep. The next morning, I made coffee before sunrise. The percolator sputtered and hissed, filling the kitchen with that dark, bitter smell that pulls a man out of bed whether he wants to get up or not. Through the window, I could see Curtis's barn apartment. No lights. He'd be sleeping in, like he always did in winter. Vera came down around 7, already dressed, hair perfect, makeup on. She smiled at me like nothing had happened. "Morning, Marsh." "Morning." I poured her a cup, added the cream she liked. "Sleep okay?" "Like a rock." She sipped, looking out at the property. 300 acres of frozen Missouri ground. Same land my grandfather cleared with a mule and a plow. "Curtis doing all right?" "Far as I know." "Good." She set the cup down. "I checked on him last night. Around 2, thought I heard something." I looked at her, really looked. "Heard something?" "Just wanted to make sure he was okay. You know how those new pills make him restless?" She touched my arm. "Poor thing, he's lucky to have you taking care of him." There it was again. That tone, like Curtis was a child instead of a 61-year-old man who'd lived on this property his whole life. "What new pills?" "The ones Dr. Brennan prescribed. For sleep." She rinsed her cup. "Curtis mentioned they help, but they make him a little fuzzy." I hadn't heard anything about new pills. After Vera left for her shift at the church office, she volunteered 3 days a week now, kept her busy after she'd quit the bank, I walked out to Curtis's place. The cold bit through my coat. My boots broke through the ice crust on the snow, each step a small crack and crunch. Curtis answered on the third knock, still in his pajamas. Batman pajamas. He'd loved Batman since he was 7, right before the tractor accident that had left him the way he was. "Hey, Marsh," he smiled, but his eyes had that foggy look Vera had mentioned. Dark circles underneath. "Can I come in?" Sure. He stepped back. The barn apartment smelled like heating oil and Old Spice. I'd helped him fix it up 15 years ago, after Daddy died. Made it real nice. His own place, but close enough I could keep an eye on things. We sat at his little kitchen table. I noticed a prescription bottle by the sink. "Curtis, you taking new medication?" He scratched his head. "Yeah. Miss Vera said Dr. Brennan thought they'd help me sleep better." "How long you been on them?" 3 weeks? Maybe 4? He frowned. "They make me real tired at night. Sometimes I wake up and don't remember things." "What kind of things?" He looked down at his hands. Big hands, like Daddy's. Strong, even if his mind worked different. "Miss Vera brings me papers sometimes. At night. Says I need to sign them. For the bank, she says, but I can't really remember what they are." The cold in my chest had nothing to do with December. "What kind of papers, son?" "I don't know." His voice got small. "She says it's grown-up stuff. That you're real busy and she's helping me become more independent, like having my own bank account and such." I reached across and put my hand on his. "Curtis, did you ask for your own bank account?" I think so." He looked confused, scared. "Miss Vera said it was time. That I'm a man and should have my own money." Through the window, I could see the main house, smoke rising from the chimney. Vera would be leaving soon for the church. "Can you show me these papers?" Curtis got up and pulled open a drawer. Inside was a stack of documents, some with carbon copies still attached, bank forms, something with an official-looking seal. I pulled one out, Curtis's signature at the bottom, but the handwriting looked shaky, wrong. The date said 2:15 a.m., December 4th. Curtis went to bed every night at 9 o'clock. Had since he was a boy. "Curtis, what time does Miss Vera usually come by?" "Late." He rubbed his eyes. "After I take my pills. Sometimes I'm already asleep, and she wakes me up, says she's sorry, but the paperwork can't wait." My hands started shaking, not from cold. "One more question, buddy. When you sign these papers, do you understand what you're signing? He looked at me with those trusting eyes, the same eyes that had looked up at me 55 years ago when Daddy said, "Your brother needs you, Marshall. You're in charge now." "Not really," Curtis whispered. "The pills make everything fuzzy. Miss Vera says it's okay, that she's making sure everything's right. She says—" He stopped. "What does she say?" "She says, you worry too much, that this is between us grown-ups." I felt something crack inside my chest, not my heart, something harder, something that had been holding me together for 8 years of marriage to a woman I thought I knew. That Sunday, the whole congregation gathered for the Christmas potluck. The church basement smelled like green bean casserole and ham, that thick, warm smell that usually made a place feel like home. Metal folding chairs scraped against linoleum. Kids ran between tables while their mothers chased them down. Vera had made her famous apple pie, 3 of them. She set them on the dessert table and immediately got surrounded by the church ladies, all of them praising her crust, her filling, asking for the recipe she'd never share. I sat with Curtis at one of the back tables. He picked at his plate, eating slow, still had that foggy look. Pastor Webb stood up to say grace, then made his usual announcements. New hymnals coming in January. Youth group needed chaperones for the ski trip. Then he smiled at Vera. "Before we eat, I want to recognize Vera Hendricks for her incredible service to this community." He started clapping. Everyone joined in. Vera's been volunteering in our office, organizing our outreach programs, and just this week she told me about a wonderful project she's undertaken. Vera stood up, looking humble. Perfect posture. Perfect smile. "It's nothing, really," she said. "I just believe Curtis deserves to have his own independence. Marshall's done such an amazing job caring for him all these years." She looked at me, and half the congregation followed her gaze. "But Curtis is a grown man. He should have his own bank account, his own financial autonomy." More applause. I felt my face getting hot. "So I've been helping Curtis set that up," Vera continued, "making sure he understands his options, helping him become more self-sufficient." She put her hand over her heart. "It's the least I can do for such a sweet soul." Curtis shifted beside me, uncomfortable with the attention. "That's wonderful," Mrs. Patterson said from 2 tables over. "Marshall, you must be so relieved to have Vera helping with Curtis's care." I opened my mouth, closed it. What was I supposed to say? That my wife was visiting my brother in the middle of the night? That Curtis couldn't remember signing papers? That something felt wrong in a way I couldn't quite name yet? "Vera's real helpful," I managed. After lunch, I saw Vera talking to Judith Kovich, the church treasurer. They stood by the coat rack, heads close together. I pretended to be getting more coffee, close enough to hear. "Estate planning resources," Judith was saying. "My daughter Sharon handles those cases. If Curtis needs help understanding his assets—" "That would be wonderful," Vera said. "Curtis has quite a bit tied up in the property, 50% ownership. It's complicated when someone has his limitations." "Sharon specializes in that. Guardianship arrangements, power of attorney." Judith lowered her voice. "Does Marshall have legal authority over Curtis's decisions?" "Not officially. It's always just been understood that Marshall handles things," Vera sighed. "But Curtis is expressing interest in being more involved. It's really quite touching." I poured coffee I didn't want. My hand shook, sloshing it over the rim. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I got up and went to the spare room I used as an office. I needed to find our property tax documents, make sure everything was in order before the April deadline. My desk was organized, always had been. Came from 40 years as a county assessor. You learn to keep your papers straight, but when I opened the bottom drawer looking for the deed folder, I found something else. A portable notary kit, the kind loan officers carry. Seal, stamp pad, embosser, the whole setup. Vera had worked at First Missouri Bank until 2 years ago. Said she'd retired early to spend more time at home. I'd never questioned it. I picked up the notary seal. The metal was cold against my palm. It had her name engraved on it, Vera Hendricks, Notary Public. Commission expires 06/2022. It was December 2024. Her license had expired over 2 years ago. I sat there in the dark, holding that expired seal, and thought about Curtis's signature on documents dated 2:15 a.m. Thought about notarized documents. Thought about my wife sneaking into my brother's room while he was drugged on sleep medication. I heard her footsteps on the stairs. Quick. She'd realized I wasn't in bed. Marsh? She appeared in the doorway. What are you doing up? I held up the notary seal. Looking for tax documents. Found this instead. Something flickered across her face. Fast. Gone before I could name it. Oh, that old thing. I keep meaning to throw it out. Your commission expired 2 years ago. I know. She came into the room, sat on the edge of the desk, casual. Why? Curtis has been signing notarized documents. Has he? She tilted her head. Well, he must have gone to the bank. Good for him, taking initiative. The documents are dated 2 in the morning. Silence. The furnace kicked on downstairs, a low rumble through the floorboards. Marshall. Her voice changed, got sharp. What exactly are you accusing me of? I'm not accusing, I'm asking. You're asking if I'm forging notarizations on your brother's documents? If I'm, what, stealing from him? She stood up. Do you hear yourself? I just want to understand. No, you want to control. She crossed her arms. You've controlled Curtis his entire life, made every decision for him, kept him dependent, and now that someone's actually trying to help him grow up, you can't stand it. That's not. I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. She walked toward the door, then stopped. And tomorrow, I'm calling a lawyer. If you're going to treat me like a criminal in my own home, maybe we need some space to figure out this marriage. She left. I heard the guest room door close, lock. I sat there with the expired notary seal in my hand, the metal warming from my palm, and realized I just made everything worse. My wife was going to file for separation. Half the church already thought she was a saint for helping Curtis, and I had nothing but a gut feeling and an expired seal that proved exactly nothing. Outside, the wind picked up. I heard ice cracking on the branches. Somewhere in the dark, Curtis was sleeping in his barn apartment, completely unaware that everything was about to fall apart. Wednesday morning, Bo showed up at 6:30 like he had every week for the past 40 years. His truck rattled up the drive, exhaust white in the cold air. I had the coffee ready. He came in stomping snow off his boots, bringing the smell of cigarette smoke and gun oil with him. Bo Lattimore was 70, had been sheriff for 30 years before he retired, and had known me since we were both 5 years old, fighting over toy trucks in the church nursery. You look like hell, he said, sitting down at the kitchen table. I poured 2 cups. Didn't sleep much. Where's Vera? Guest room. Maybe still asleep. I set his cup down. Black, no sugar. Same as always. We had a fight. Bo sipped his coffee, watching me over the rim. He had that look he used to get during investigations, patient, waiting for the truth to come out on its own. So I told him, all of it, the nighttime visits, Curtis's medication, the documents signed at 2 a.m., the expired notary seal. When I finished, Bo set his cup down slow. Show me the seal. I got it from the office. Bo turned it over in his weathered hands, studying it like evidence. This ain't marital drama, Marsh. His voice was quiet, serious. This is criminal. You think... I think I've seen this pattern before. Back in '08, had a case. Woman was doing the same thing to her elderly father-in-law, waiting until his Alzheimer's meds kicked in, getting him to sign powers of attorney, deed transfers. By the time the family caught on, she'd sold his house out from under him. My stomach dropped. What happened to her? 5 years in Jefferson City for financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. He set the seal down. Notary fraud's a felony, Marsh. If she's been using an expired license to notarize Curtis's signature on legal documents, that's forgery. I don't know what to do. The words came out rough. Half the church thinks she's wonderful. She's threatening separation, and I've got nothing but suspicion. Bo was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You need proof before she destroys evidence. How? Install a camera. In Curtis's apartment. He looked at me. I know you. You're thinking that's an invasion of privacy, that it's wrong. But son, if she's doing what I think she's doing, Curtis can't protect himself. Someone has to. I thought about Curtis's foggy eyes, his confusion, the way he'd whispered, I don't really understand what I'm signing. You got that surveying camera? Bo asked. The night vision one you use for property assessments? I did. It was in the equipment shed, battery-powered, motion-activated. I'd used it for years to document property boundaries in low light, catch trespassers cutting through farmland. I don't know if I can do that to my own wife. Then do it for your brother. Bo finished his coffee. My sister Sharon's a lawyer, estate cases, elder law. Let me call her at least. Get some legal advice before this goes further. Vera mentioned her yesterday. At church. Bo's eyebrows went up. Did she now? Talking to Judith Kovich about estate planning, power of attorney, guardianship. Christ. Bo rubbed his face. She's moving fast. Marsh, listen to me. If Vera's building a legal case to get control of Curtis's assets, you need to move faster. That property's worth what now? Million? More? Last appraisal had it at 1.2. Developers have been sniffing around for years, wanting to put in a strip mall. Exactly. Bo stood up. I'm calling Sharon today, and you need to install that camera. Tonight, if you can. After Bo left, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The morning sun came through the window, bright against the snow. I could see Curtis's barn apartment, smoke rising from his chimney. He'd be up soon, making his breakfast. Oatmeal with brown sugar. Same thing every morning. Daddy's voice echoed in my head. Your brother needs you, Marshall. You're in charge now. I'd been 10 years old when he said that. Curtis was 5, just home from the hospital after 3 months of surgeries and therapy. The tractor had rolled on him in the north field, crushed his skull. The doctor said he was lucky to be alive, but he'd never be quite right. 57 years, I'd been looking after him, and now I was going to put a camera in his home to spy on my own wife. I got up and went to the equipment shed. The cold bit at my face, but the physical work felt good. I found the camera, checked the battery, tested the feed on my phone. The image came through clear, grainy green night vision, but detailed enough to see faces, read documents. That afternoon, while Vera was at the church office and Curtis was at his weekly occupational therapy session with Dottie Chen, I went into the barn apartment. My hands shook as I positioned the camera on his bookshelf, hidden between a model train and his collection of Batman comics. I angled it toward the small kitchen table where he usually sat with visitors. The motion sensor blinked red once, then went dark. Back in the main house, I checked my phone. The app showed Curtis's empty apartment, the feed crystal clear. All I had to do now was wait. That night, at 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. The next morning, I called Dottie Chen. She'd been Curtis's occupational therapist for 6 years, came to the house 3 times a week to help him with daily living skills, social interaction, money management. She was good people. Mr. Hendricks? Her voice was concerned. Is Curtis all right? That's what I'm calling about. Has he seemed different to you lately? A pause. Actually, yes. The last few weeks he's been more confused than usual, tired. I mentioned it to him and he said his new medication was helping him sleep better, but... Another pause. Mr. Hendricks, I was going to call you. Yesterday, Mrs. Hendricks contacted me to cancel Curtis's standing appointments. My hand tightened on the phone. She what? She said Curtis wanted to take a break from therapy, that he was feeling overwhelmed by his schedule. Dottie's voice got quieter. But Curtis never mentioned wanting to stop. In fact, he was excited about learning to use the new budgeting app I'd been teaching him. Don't cancel those appointments. I wasn't planning to, not without hearing it from Curtis directly. She hesitated. Is there something going on I should know about? I looked out the window at Curtis's barn apartment. I think there might be. Can you keep this between us for now? Of course. After I hung up, I finally opened the camera app on my phone. I'd been avoiding it all morning, afraid of what I'd see, or maybe afraid I'd see nothing, that my gut had been wrong, that I had violated Vera's privacy and my brother's space for no reason. The motion alert had been triggered at 11:47 p.m. I pulled up the footage. The green night vision glow made everything look otherworldly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Curtis's apartment door opened. Vera stepped inside. She was wearing her bathrobe, carrying a leather portfolio. She moved quietly through Curtis's living space and knocked softly on his bedroom door. A long moment passed. Then Curtis appeared, rubbing his eyes. He was in his Batman pajamas, swaying slightly. Even through the grainy footage, I could see how drugged he looked. Miss Vera? His voice was slurred. What time is it? Late, sweetie. I'm sorry to wake you. Her voice was gentle, patient. But we need to finish that paperwork we talked about. Remember? Curtis nodded slowly, like his head was too heavy. He sat down at the kitchen table. Vera sat across from him, opened the portfolio. Now, this is just like we discussed. You're opening your own investment account. Very grown up. She pulled out several documents. All you have to do is sign where I've marked. Curtis squinted at the papers. I can't. The words are blurry. That's okay. It's just standard banking language. You trust me, right? Yeah. Good boy. She guided his hand to the first signature line. Right here. I watched Curtis sign. His handwriting was shaky, uncertain, nothing like his usual careful block letters. Vera pulled out the portable notary seal, the same one I'd found in my desk. She stamped the document with practiced efficiency, then moved Curtis's hand to the next paper. This one too, and this one. Miss Vera, I'm real tired. I know, sweetie, just a few more. She glanced at her watch. We have to finish before midnight for the bank deadline. Curtis signed 3 more documents. Each time, Vera notarized with that expired seal. Then she leaned closer. Now, Curtis, this is important. This is between us grown-ups, okay? Marshall worries too much. If we tell him about this, he'll just get upset and try to stop you from being independent. You don't want that, do you? Curtis shook his head. So this is our secret. Can you keep a secret? I guess so. Good boy. She gathered the papers, put them back in the portfolio. Now go back to sleep. And remember, don't mention the paperwork to Marshall. She left. Curtis sat at the table for a moment, looking confused and lost. Then he shuffled back to his bedroom. The footage ended. I sat in my kitchen, staring at my phone, feeling sick. The coffee I'd drunk earlier burned in my stomach. Then I went back through the camera's memory. There were 6 more recordings from the past week. I watched them all. Same pattern. Vera arriving between 11:30 p.m. and midnight. Curtis drugged and compliant, documents signed, notary seal applied, warnings not to tell Marshall. In one video, I could see part of a document title, Quit Claim Deed. I called Bo. Get over here, now. He arrived 20 minutes later. I showed him the footage, all of it. Bo watched in silence, his jaw tight. When the video's finished, he sat back in his chair. Jesus Christ, Marsh. What do I do? First, you save all of this, back it up, cloud storage, flash drive, everything. He pulled out his phone. Second, I'm calling Sharon. This needs to move fast. While Bo talked to his sister, I went through the rest of the camera footage, looking for anything I'd missed. That's when I saw it. A document Vera had left on the table for just a moment, visible to the camera before she tucked it away. A letter. I paused the footage, zoomed in. The letterhead said Horizon Development Corporation. I could make out fragments of text. Offer to purchase, Hendricks property, parcels 118 and 119, $600,000. Both owners must consent. Both owners. Curtis and me. 50-50 split, just like Daddy's will had specified. Vera wasn't just helping Curtis open a bank account. She was trying to sell our land out from under us. Bo finished his call. Sharon's on her way. She's 40 minutes out. He looked at the frozen frame on my phone. What's that? I showed him. Son of a bitch. Bo leaned closer. $600,000. That's what this is about. But Curtis can't consent to a sale. He doesn't have the legal capacity. Not when he's drugged, he doesn't. That's the point. Bo stood up, paced. She's been systematically getting him to sign documents while he's legally incompetent. Power of attorney, probably. Maybe even guardianship papers. Once she has legal control, she can sell the property and Curtis can't stop her. The room felt too small, too hot. I'm gonna kill her. No, you're not. Bo put a hand on my shoulder, hard. You're going to let the law handle this. But Marsh, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly. Vera's not going to go down without a fight. He was right. That afternoon, while I was meeting with Sharon at Bo's house, going over the footage and building a case for emergency guardianship, Vera filed for legal separation. The petition arrived at Bo's house by courier at 4:00 p.m. Sharon read it, her face getting darker with each page. She's claiming you're controlling and potentially abusive to Curtis, Sharon said. She's asking for a temporary restraining order to prevent you from interfering with her legitimate efforts to help Curtis achieve independence. That's insane. That's strategy. Sharon set the papers down. She knows you're onto her. This is a preemptive strike. If she can paint you as the abuser, it muddies the water, makes your accusations look like retaliation. Will it work? Not with the video evidence, but it'll buy her time. Sharon looked at me seriously. Mr. Hendricks, I need to be clear. You're about to enter a legal battle with your wife. It's going to be public, it's going to be expensive, and your community is going to take sides. I thought about the church potluck, about Vera's perfect smile and her apple pies and the way everyone applauded her charity. How long before I can see Curtis again? if the judge grants her restraining order until we get it overturned. Could be days, could be weeks. I looked out Beau's front window. His porch faced Route 34, the road that ran past both our properties. I could see my land in the distance, 300 acres of frozen ground my family had worked for 4 generations. Do whatever you have to do, I said. Curtis comes first. Sharon nodded. Then we file for emergency guardianship tomorrow morning, and we attach every frame of that video footage. That night, I didn't go home. Couldn't face seeing Vera, knowing what she was. Beau set me up in his guest room. I lay there in the dark, listening to wind chimes on his porch and the distant sound of a freight train. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. You're making a mistake. Curtis deserves better than your jealousy. V. I didn't reply. At 11:53 p.m., another motion alert from Curtis's apartment. The restraining order came through Friday morning. Temporary, the judge said, just until a full hearing could be held, but it meant I couldn't go within 500 feet of Curtis without a court-appointed supervisor present. Sharon arranged a supervised visit for Saturday afternoon at Beau's porch. Neutral territory. A social worker named Patricia Mills would be there to observe. I hadn't seen Curtis in 3 days, longest we'd been apart in years. He arrived in Vera's car. She stayed in the driver's seat, engine running, while Curtis got out and walked up to the porch. He looked smaller somehow, scared. Patricia Mills stood by the railing, clipboard in hand. Professional distance. Hey, buddy. I stood up from the rocking chair but didn't move toward him. Didn't want to spook him. Hey, Marsh? His voice was quiet. He sat in the other chair, the one Beau usually used. The wood creaked under his weight. We sat in silence for a moment. A cardinal called from the oak tree. The wind chimes made their soft, metallic song. Curtis, I need to show you something. I pulled out my phone, pulled up a screenshot I'd saved, the one showing the document Vera had made him sign. Do you remember signing this? He leaned over, squinting at the screen. His face went confused, then worried. I don't know. Maybe? It's a quitclaim deed. Do you know what that is? He shook his head. It means you're giving away your half of the property. 50%, your inheritance from Daddy. Curtis's eyes got wide. But this is my home. I know, son. Miss Vera said it was just bank papers. She said... He stopped, looking at Patricia Mills. Looked back at me. She said you'd be mad if you found out, that you'd think I was being stupid. I felt my chest tighten. Curtis, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You're not stupid. You've never been stupid. And I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at what's being done to you. He was quiet, picking at a loose thread on his coat. I need your permission to help you, I said. There's going to be lawyers and a judge and a lot of complicated stuff, but I can't do any of it unless you tell me it's okay. Curtis looked up at me. His eyes were wet. I'm scared, Marsh. I know. I don't want to lose the house. I don't want to leave. You won't. I promise you won't. He wiped his face with his sleeve. Miss Vera said, she said if I told you about the papers, you'd put me in a home. One of those places where they lock the doors. My hands curled into fists. I made myself breathe, made myself stay calm. Curtis, look at me. I waited until he met my eyes. Daddy put me in charge of you when we were boys. You remember what he said? Curtis nodded. Your brother needs you, Marshall. You take care of him. That's right. And I've been doing that for 57 years. I'm not going to stop now. I leaned forward. But I need you to help me help you. Can you do that? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded stack of papers. Miss Vera left these on the table the other night, he said quietly. After I signed them. She always takes the papers with her, but she forgot these. I kept them. Don't know why. I took them carefully. Carbon copies, the kind that come attached to notarized documents. Curtis's signature at the bottom of each one, that shaky handwriting I'd seen on the video footage. Patricia Mills stepped closer, looking interested. I unfolded them slowly. The first was a power of attorney dated February 2nd. It gave Vera Hendricks full authority to make financial and legal decisions on behalf of Curtis James Hendricks. The second was a bank authorization, allowing Vera to access Curtis's disability payments. The third was the quitclaim deed I'd seen on the video, transferring Curtis's 50% interest in the property to Vera, all notarized with that expired seal. Curtis, can I keep these? I asked. He nodded. Are they bad? Their evidence, Patricia Mills said, speaking for the first time. She was looking at the documents with a professional concern that gave me hope. Mr. Hendricks, I need to note this for my report. These documents appear to have been signed under questionable circumstances. Thank you, I said. Curtis reached across and grabbed my hand. His palm was rough, calloused from years of helping with property maintenance, fixing fences, clearing brush, working hands. Marsh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Stop. I squeezed his hand. You didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault. You understand me? He nodded, but I could see he didn't quite believe it yet. We sat like that for a while, holding hands like we used to when he was small and scared of thunderstorms. The February sun was weak through the clouds, but it was there. The temperature had climbed above freezing for the first time in weeks. I could hear water dripping from Bo's gutters, ice melting. Daddy would be proud of you, Curtis said suddenly. Why's that? Because you're keeping your promise. He looked at me with those trusting eyes. You're taking care of me, like you always have. Down the road, Vera's car honked twice. Time to go. Curtis stood up slowly. Will I see you again soon? Soon as the judge lets me, I promised. And Curtis, don't sign anything else. Not for Vera, not for anybody, not until this is all sorted out, okay? Okay. He started down the porch steps, then turned back. Marsh, that thing you said about Daddy being proud? I think he'd be proud of both of us. I watched him walk back to Vera's car, watched them drive away down Route 34, exhaust white in the cold air. Patricia Mills put away her clipboard. Mr. Hendricks, I'll be filing my report Monday morning. For what it's worth, I believe your brother needs protection. After she left, I sat on Bo's porch with those carbon copies in my lap, feeling the sun on my face and listening to the drip of melting ice. Winter was starting to break. Monday morning, I had to go into town for supplies. The feed store was busy, farmers stocking up before the next cold snap. I walked in, and the conversation at the counter stopped dead. Tom Eckhart, who I'd known for 40 years, suddenly got real interested in a bag of cracked corn. I grabbed what I needed, salt blocks, fence staples, a new pair of work gloves, and brought it to the counter. The clerk, Danny Pierce's kid, rang me up without making eye contact. 1847, he mumbled. I paid cash. As I turned to leave, I heard Tom's voice, low but meant to carry. Shame what some folks'll do when they get jealous. I stopped, turned around. You got something to say to me, Tom? He looked up. Just that Vera Hendricks is doing the Lord's work, helping Curtis, and some people can't stand to see someone else get credit. That what you think is happening? That's what I hear, he crossed his arms. Here you got a restraining order. Can't even see your own brother without supervision. You hear why? Here you didn't like Vera teaching Curtis to be independent, got controlling about it. 3 other men had gathered now, watching, listening. Tom, you've known me since we were boys. You really think I'd hurt Curtis? I think marriage problems make people do strange things, he shrugged. And I think it's interesting timing, you making all these accusations right when Vera's helping Curtis get his own finances in order. I felt the feed store walls closing in. These were my neighbors, men I'd worked beside at church work days, sat with at county meetings, helped when their own barns flooded or their equipment broke down, and half of them thought I was the villain. Believe what you want, I said, and walked out. I was loading supplies in my truck when Pastor Webb pulled up beside me. Marshall, you got a minute? Not really in the mood, Pastor. I understand you're going through a difficult time. He got out of his car, that concerned shepherd look on his face. Vera came to see me yesterday. She's very worried about Curtis. And about you. I kept loading. A 50-pound salt block, fence staples rattling in their box. She thinks maybe we should sit down together, mediate the situation before it gets more out of hand. No, thank you. Marshall, I've known you for 30 years. This isn't like you. Whatever's going on between you and Vera, Curtis shouldn't be caught in the middle. I turned to face him. Curtis is exactly what this is about. And if Vera wants to sit down and mediate, she can start by explaining why she's been notarizing documents with an expired license. Pastor Webb blinked. I'm sure there's an explanation. I'm sure there is too, a criminal one. I climbed into my truck. Tell Vera if she wants to talk, she can do it in court. I drove back to Bo's house. I still couldn't go home, not while Vera was there, and found Sharon's car in the driveway. She was sitting at Beau's kitchen table with a laptop and about 6 file folders spread out. "Good news and better news," she said when I came in. I could use both. "Good news. I found a notary expert willing to testify that Vera's seal expired in June 2022. Every document she's notarized since then is invalid." Beau poured me coffee without asking. It smelled like salvation. "Better news?" I asked. Sharon pulled up something on her laptop. "I did some digging into Vera's finances. She's got $47,000 in gambling debts. Online poker." I sat down hard. "What?" "I found the payment records. She's been playing high-stakes games for about 18 months, losing bad." Sharon turned the laptop so I could see. Page after page of transactions. That development company offering $600,000 for your property? Vera had negotiated the sale privately. She was going to split it with them, take her cut, and disappear before anyone knew what happened. Beau leaned against the counter. "That's motive. Clear as day." "There's more." Sharon pulled up another file. Dottie Chen, Curtis's therapist, submitted a formal report this morning. She documents Curtis's cognitive decline over the past 3 months, correlating exactly with when Vera started the new medication. Dottie also found the prescribing physician, Dr. Brennan. He confirms the medication creates a window of legal incompetence between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. So Curtis couldn't have legally consented to anything during that time. Exactly. Any documents signed in that window are invalid. Sharon closed the laptop. "We've got her, Marshall. Video evidence, medical testimony, notary fraud, financial motive. The emergency guardianship hearing is Thursday. I'm confident we'll win." I should have felt relieved, vindicated, but all I felt was tired. "What about Vera?" I asked. "If the judge agrees with our evidence, she'll face criminal charges. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult is a Class C felony in Missouri. She's looking at 3 to 10 years. I thought about the woman I'd married 8 years ago, the woman who made apple pies and volunteered at church and smiled at me over morning coffee. "I didn't see it," I said. "Any of it. What kind of fool does that make me to you?" Beau put a hand on my shoulder. "The kind who wanted to believe the best of people. That ain't foolish, Marsh. That's decent. She's the one who twisted it." Outside, the afternoon sun was melting the last of the snow. Water ran in the ditches along Route 34. Spring was coming, whether I was ready for it or not. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on Beau's porch in the dark, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the distant sound of the creek running high with snowmelt. The temperature had dropped again, but you could feel something different in the air, the season turning. Beau came out around 2 in the morning, carrying 2 glasses and a bottle of whiskey. "Can't sleep either." He sat down in the other rocker, poured 2 fingers in each glass. "Thinking too much." "About?" I took the glass. The whiskey burned going down, but it was a good burn, honest. "About whether I'm doing this for Curtis or for me." Beau was quiet for a moment. "Explain that." "The hearing's Thursday. Sharon says we'll win. Vera will go to jail. I'll get guardianship. Everything goes back to how it was." I stared out at the dark fields. But how it was me making every decision for Curtis. Telling him what to do, where to go, how to live. Maybe Vera was right about that part. Maybe I have been controlling him. "You kept him safe." I kept him dependent." I took another drink. 57 years, Beau. He's 61 years old, and I still treat him like he's that 5-year-old boy coming home from the hospital. He needs help. He needs respect. I set the glass down. When I watched those videos, you know what made me the sickest? Not Vera's lies, not the forged documents. It was Curtis's face, the way he looked when she said, "good boy," like he was a dog being trained. And I realized I've been doing the same thing his whole life. Different words, maybe, but same thing. A barn owl called from somewhere out in the timber. "So what are you saying?" Beau asked. "You want to let Vera get away with it?" "No. God, no. She has to face consequences for what she did." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "But after this is over, I need to figure out how to be Curtis's brother again. Not his keeper, not his parent, his brother." "That's fair." "Is it?" I looked at him. "Or am I just telling myself that to feel better about destroying my marriage and sending my wife to prison?" Beau sipped his whiskey. "You remember that case I told you about? The woman who exploited her father-in-law?" "Yeah." "Her husband, the old man's son, he asked me the same question. Said he felt guilty for turning in his own wife. Wondered if maybe he was overreacting, if maybe there was a way to handle it privately. Bo set his glass on the porch rail. You know what I told him? What? I said, your daddy can't protect himself. Someone has to. And that someone is you. Everything else is just noise. He looked at me. Same applies here, Marsh. Curtis can't fight Vera. Hell, he doesn't even understand what she was doing to him. You're not destroying your marriage. She did that when she decided to drug your brother and steal his inheritance. You're just making sure she faces the music. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe this was righteous and necessary, and the only way. But I kept seeing Vera's face across the kitchen table on 1,000 ordinary mornings. The way she'd laughed at my stories, the way she'd held my hand at Mary's funeral. 8 years of a life together. How much of it had been real? You think she ever loved me? I asked. Or was it always about the land? Bo was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I don't know, Marsh. Maybe both. Maybe she loved you and still did this. People are complicated. We sat in silence, watching the stars. A cold front was moving in. You could feel it on the wind. But behind it, spring waited. Patient, inevitable. Wednesday afternoon, Sharon called. Are you sitting down? Should I be? Curtis wants to testify. My heart dropped. Sharon, no. He doesn't need to go through that. Marshall, listen. I met with him this morning at the supervised facility. He brought something to show me. She paused. His Batman action figure. From when he was a kid, he said he wants to bring it to court tomorrow for courage. I closed my eyes. He said, and I quote, I want to tell the judge that Miss Vera made me feel small. But I'm not small. I'm a grown man, and grown men tell the truth. Jesus, Sharon. I tried to talk him out of it. Told him it wasn't necessary, that we have enough evidence, but he was adamant. Her voice softened. Marshall, he wants to speak for himself. Maybe we should let him. I thought about what I'd said to Bo, about respect, about treating Curtis like a brother instead of a child. Okay, I said. If that's what he wants, but I want to be there when he practices. Can you arrange that? Already done. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., courthouse meeting room. You, me, Curtis, and Batman. Despite everything, I smiled. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and old paper. Sharon met me in the lobby at 8:30, carrying her briefcase and a coffee that looked like it had been reheated twice. Curtis is already here, she said. Dottie brought him. We went upstairs to a small conference room. Curtis sat at a long table, turning his Batman figure over in his hands. The paint was worn off in places from decades of play. One of the cape's points was broken. He looked up when I came in, smiled. Hey, Marsh. Hey, buddy. I sat down across from him. You sure you want to do this? He nodded, set Batman on the table between us like the little figure was a witness too. Sharon says I don't have to, that you have enough proof already. We do, but I want to. He looked at me with those clear eyes, more focused than I'd seen them in months. Miss Vera said I was too stupid to understand grown-up things, but I'm not stupid, and I understand what she did was wrong. Sharon pulled out her legal pad. Okay, let's practice. The judge is going to ask you some questions. I'll ask you first, then Vera's lawyer will ask you. His name is Mr. Pritchard, and he might try to confuse you. Why would he do that? Because it's his job to defend Vera. He's going to try to make it seem like you knew what you were signing, that you wanted to give Vera control of your money. Curtis frowned. But I didn't. I know. That's what we need you to tell the judge. We spent an hour going over the questions. Curtis answered slowly, carefully. Sometimes he had to think for a long time before responding, but every answer was honest and clear. At 10 o'clock, we went into the courtroom. The room was bigger than I'd expected. Wood-paneled walls, high ceiling, the Missouri state seal behind the judge's bench. About 20 people sat in the gallery. Bo, Dottie, a few court officials, some reporters, and Vera. She sat at the defendant's table with her lawyer, wearing a blue dress I'd bought her for her birthday 2 years ago. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was perfect. She looked like someone's beloved grandmother, not a woman facing felony charges. When she saw me, something flickered across her face. Hurt, maybe, or anger. It was gone too fast to read. Judge Patricia Hendry came in, no relation, and we all stood. She was 60, gray-haired, with the kind of face that had seen every variety of human foolishness and stopped being surprised decades ago. Be seated. She looked at the docket. Case number 24-CV-8847, in the matter of guardianship for Curtis James Hendricks. Ms. Kovich, you're representing the petitioner? Sharon stood. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Pritchard, you're representing Mrs. Hendricks? Yes, Your Honor. Let's proceed. Sharon presented our evidence first. She played 3 of the video recordings on a large monitor. The courtroom watched in silence as Vera entered Curtis's apartment, woke him from his drug sleep, guided his hand across documents. I watched Vera's face. She kept it neutral, but her hands clenched in her lap. Then Sharon called Dottie Chen to the stand. Dottie explained Curtis's cognitive abilities, his medication schedule, the window of impairment. She presented her clinical notes, documenting his confusion, his decline over the past 3 months. In your professional opinion, Sharon asked, would Curtis have been capable of understanding complex legal documents between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. while on this medication? Absolutely not, Dottie said. He would have been legally incompetent to consent to any binding agreements. Next came the notary expert, a man named Gerald Fisher, who'd been a notary public for 30 years. He examined Vera's seal, checked the records. This commission expired in June 2022, he testified. Any notarizations performed after that date with this seal are fraudulent, including these. He held up the documents Curtis had given me. Mr. Pritchard tried to poke holes in the evidence, suggested the videos were taken without proper consent, implied I had coached Curtis, argued that Vera had simply made an administrative error with her notary license. But the evidence was overwhelming. Even I could see it. Finally, Sharon called Curtis to the stand. He walked up slowly, carrying his Batman figure. The bailiff swore him in. Curtis put his hand on the Bible and repeated the oath in that careful voice he used when he wanted to get something exactly right. Do you understand why you're here today, Mr. Hendricks? Judge Hendry asked gently. Yes, ma'am, because Miss Vera made me sign papers I didn't understand. Can you tell me about that? Curtis looked at Sharon, who nodded. Then he looked at the judge. Miss Vera would come to my house real late at night, after I took my pills. The pills make me fuzzy, like everything's underwater. She'd wake me up and say we had to sign papers for the bank. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I couldn't read them good. The words were all blurry, but she said it was okay, that she was helping me be independent. Did you want to be independent from your brother Marshall? No, ma'am. Curtis shook his head. Marsh takes care of me. He always has, since I was little, after the tractor accident. What did Mrs. Hendricks tell you about Marshall? Curtis looked down at Batman. She said Marsh would be mad if he found out about the papers, that he'd think I was being stupid, that he might put me in a home where they lock the doors. My hands clenched on the table. Were you afraid of that? The judge asked. Yes, ma'am. I was real scared. Curtis's voice got quieter. But then Marsh found out anyway, and he wasn't mad. He said I wasn't stupid. He said none of it was my fault. Judge Hendry made a note. Mr. Hendricks, if you could live anywhere you wanted, where would that be? Curtis looked right at me. At my place, the barn apartment, with Marsh nearby. That's my home. That's where I belong. Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. You can step down. Curtis walked back to his seat beside Dottie. He was shaking a little, but he'd done it. He'd spoken for himself. Mr. Pritchard called Vera to the stand. She testified that she'd only been trying to help Curtis, that she'd made mistakes with the notary seal but had no criminal intent, that I was controlling, and she'd simply wanted to give Curtis some autonomy. The judge listened without expression. Finally, after 2 hours of testimony, Judge Hendry sat back in her chair. I've heard enough, she said. Mrs. Hendricks, stand please. Vera stood. For the first time, she looked afraid. Mrs. Hendricks, I've reviewed the video evidence, the medical testimony, and the financial records. I've also listened to Mr. Curtis Hendricks testify in his own words about what happened to him. Judge Hendry's voice was firm. What you did was not help. It was exploitation. You systematically drugged a vulnerable adult, forged legal documents using an expired notary seal, and attempted to defraud him of his inheritance for personal financial gain. Vera's lawyer started to speak, but the judge held up her hand. I'm granting the petition for emergency guardianship. Marshall Hendricks is hereby appointed legal guardian for Curtis James Hendricks, with full authority over financial and medical decisions. All documents signed by Curtis Hendricks between September 2024 and March 2025 are declared invalid due to lack of capacity to consent. Sharon squeezed my arm. Furthermore, Judge Hendry continued, I'm referring this matter to the Willow County Prosecutor's Office for criminal investigation. Mrs. Hendricks, you are charged with financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, notary fraud, and forgery. Bail is set at $50,000. Two bailiffs moved toward Vera. She looked back at me, and for just a moment I saw her mask crack, saw something that might have been regret, or maybe just anger at getting caught. They let her out in handcuffs. The courtroom emptied slowly. People came up to shake my hand, to tell Curtis he'd done well. Pastor Webb was there. He'd slipped in during the testimony. He looked shaken. Marshall, I owe you an apology, he said quietly. I should have listened, should have questioned more. You believed someone in your congregation. Can't fault you for that. Still, he shook his head. If there's anything the church can do to help Curtis, just treat him with respect, I said. That's all he's ever wanted. Outside, the March afternoon was cold but bright. The courthouse steps were wet from melting snow. Curtis stood beside me, still holding his Batman figure. You did good in there, I told him. I was scared. I know, but you did it anyway. That's what brave is. Bo pulled up in his truck. Y'all need a ride? Curtis looked at me. Can we go home? To my place? Yeah, buddy. We can go home. The drive back to the property took 20 minutes. Route 34 was clear, the ditches running with snow melt. We passed the feed store, the church, the bank where Vera used to work. Everything looked the same, but it all felt different now. When we turned onto our road, Curtis pressed his face to the window. Look, Marsh, the forsythia's blooming. He was right. Yellow flowers had burst out along the fence line, the first real color after months of gray and white. We parked by Curtis's barn apartment. He got out slowly, looking at his home like he hadn't seen it in years. Is it really over? He asked. The legal part is. Vera's going to jail. She can't hurt you anymore. But what about you? You were married to her. I looked at the main house, the windows dark. I'd have to go in there eventually, pack up Vera's things, figure out what to do with a home that suddenly felt too big and too empty. I'll be all right, I said. Takes more than one bad marriage to keep a Hendricks down. Curtis smiled at that. Then he said, Can we plant the corn tomorrow, if it's not too muddy? Yeah, we can plant tomorrow. That night, I walked the property line with my theodolite. Old habit, the instrument was cold and familiar in my hands, the eyepiece showing me the markers I'd set 30 years ago. Property lines aren't just about land. They're about knowing where you stand, knowing what's yours and what you're responsible for protecting. I'd failed at that for a while, let someone cross a boundary I should have defended. But Curtis was safe now, the land was secure, and spring was coming. I set up the theodolite on the rise behind Curtis's barn, where you could see the whole 300 acres spread out below. The moon was nearly full, bright enough to cast shadows. From here, I could see Curtis's light on in his window, could see him moving around inside, making his evening tea, settling in for the night, safe, home. My phone buzzed, a text from Sharon. Prosecutor filed formal charges. Vera's looking at 3-5 years, trial set for August. You did the right thing. I put the phone away and looked through the theodolite again, started measuring angles, recording numbers in my field notebook, establishing the baseline, making sure everything was where it should be. A truck engine rumbled up the drive. Bo. He climbed up the rise with 2 cups of coffee, handed me one. Thought I'd find you out here. Just checking the markers. In the dark? Moon's bright enough. We stood in comfortable silence for a while, drinking coffee, watching the land sleep. You know what Daddy used to say? I asked. He'd say, land remembers who worked it. Didn't matter who held the deed, he said. The soil knows. Wise man, your daddy. He'd have been ashamed of me for not seeing what Vera was doing sooner. Bull, Bo set his cup down. He'd have been proud you fought for Curtis when it mattered. That's what counts. Maybe he was right. Maybe Daddy would have understood that you can't see every threat coming, can only deal with them when they arrive. Down below, Curtis's light went out. Bedtime, 9 o'clock, like always. What happens now? Bo asked. Now? I packed up the theodolite. Now we plant corn, fix that section of fence by the creek, get ready for summer. I looked at him, and I figure out how to be Curtis's brother instead of his keeper. That's going to be hard. Most worthwhile things are. We walked back down the rise together, our boots squelching in the mud. The creek was running loud with runoff, and somewhere in the timber, spring peepers were starting their nightly chorus. Winter was over. Not just the season, but the cold, dark time when I'd lived with a stranger and hadn't known it. When my brother had suffered in silence because he thought silence was what we wanted from him. That time was done. Tomorrow, Curtis and I would turn the soil together, plant seeds, start fresh, some lines you measure with instruments, others you measure with trust. We'd found ours again. The morning of April 15th dawned clear and warm. Tax day, the day Vera had been racing toward with her forged documents and her desperate plans. But the only deadline that mattered now was planting season. Curtis met me at the equipment shed at sunrise. The air smelled like turned earth and possibility. Cardinals sang from every fence post. The creek ran full and clear, washing away the last traces of winter. "You ready?" I asked. He grinned. "Been ready all week." We loaded the seed drill onto the tractor, Daddy's old John Deere, still running strong after 50 years. Curtis climbed up beside me, and we drove out to the north field. The soil was perfect, moist but not muddy, dark and rich, the kind of ground that wants to grow things. I showed Curtis how to work the drill, how to space the rows, how to read the depth gauge. He'd helped with planning before, but always as my assistant, never as my partner. "You think it'll be a good year?" he asked as we made the first pass. "I think we'll work hard and see what comes. That's all any farmer can do." We planted all morning. The sun climbed higher, warming our shoulders. By noon, we'd covered 20 acres. Curtis drove while I monitored the seed flow. He was careful, methodical, good at it. When we stopped for lunch, we sat on the tailgate of my truck, eating sandwiches and looking out over the fresh planted rows. "Marsh," Curtis said, "thank you." "For what?" "For believing me. When Miss Vera said all that stuff, about me wanting independence, about you being controlling, some of it was kind of true, wasn't it?" I set my sandwich down. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you do make a lot of decisions for me. Always have." He looked at me. "But that's because I need help sometimes, not because you're mean or controlling. There's a difference." "There is," I agreed. "And I'm going to try to remember that. Ask you more, let you choose more, even if the choices aren't what I'd pick. Even if I want to paint my apartment purple. Even then, though, I might suggest a nice blue instead." He laughed. That sound, his genuine laughter, was better than any verdict, any vindication. We finished planning by late afternoon. Curtis wanted to walk the property line one more time before supper, so we took the path along the creek. The forsythia was in full bloom now, yellow as sunshine. Purple crocuses pushed up through the grass. The oak trees were budding, that first hint of green that promises summer. "You know what I've been thinking about?" Curtis said as we walked. "What's that?" "Getting a dog, a big one, maybe a shepherd or a lab." "That's a good idea. Dogs are good company. Would you help me pick one out?" "Of course I will. That's what brothers do." We reached the rise where I'd set up the theodolite that night after the hearing. Curtis pointed down at his barn apartment. "That's home," he said simply. "Right there. No matter what anybody tries to take, that's mine. Ours." "Yeah, buddy. That's ours." The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the kind of sunset that makes you believe in new beginnings. We stood there together, two brothers on land our family had worked for 4 generations. The soil beneath our feet remembered every season, every hardship, every harvest, and it would remember this too, the spring we planted together as equals. The spring we chose trust over control, voice over silence, dignity over dependence. Winter had been long and cold and full of betrayal, but we'd survived it. And spring, honest green, growing spring, was here at last. I looked at Curtis, at his peaceful face in the golden light, and thought about Daddy's voice all those years ago. "Your brother needs you, Marshall." He'd been right. Curtis did need me, but I'd learned something this season that Daddy never told me. I needed him too, not as a burden or a responsibility or a promise to keep, as a brother, as family, as someone who'd stood beside me in the worst winter of my life and come through it with grace I never expected. "Come on," I said. "Let's go home. I'll make us some supper, and you can start looking at dog pictures on the computer." Curtis smiled. "Okay, but Marsh?" "Yeah? Can we do this again tomorrow, the planting? We've got another 100 acres to cover, so yeah, we'll do this again tomorrow." We walked back toward home as the stars began to appear. Behind us, the fresh planted field waited for rain and sun and time. waited to become what it was always meant to be, just like us. Some lines you measure with instruments, property boundaries, survey markers, legal documents. Others you measure with trust, with patience, with the subtle work of growing something good from hard ground. Curtis and I had found those lines again, marked them clear, knew where we stood, and that was enough. That was everything. If this story moved you, if you've ever had to make a hard choice to protect someone you love, leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Hit that like button if you believe family land is sacred. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story from a man who learned the hard way that spring always comes. You just have to survive the winter. And if you know someone who's facing their own winter, share this with them. Sometimes we all need to be reminded, you're not alone, help is possible, and spring is coming. A big hug from this old farmer's heart. See you in the next story.